my second time. I should know how to do this by now, shouldn't I? Yes.
Problem at all.
No problem.
I like your backdrop there.
32 years. Positive thinking.
Woohoo!
So here we begin. Inviting new members always. It's always good to have more members into the positive thinking world. Informed that my blood type is to be positive. So if we're positive, things should work out. And how we got here, our rich history. Dave and John, co-founders of the club, were introduced to Brian Tracy, a successful author of motivational and self-improvement books, who developed the Phoenix Seminar on Human Relations. He came to deliver a seminar, and during that event, Dave and John both announced the formation of the Positive Thinkers Club. And today we are happy to say we have over 100 members, and we're still growing. Description of who we are, and not-for-profit or based here in St. John's, which helps to instill positive awareness in its members. Regular monthly meetings is last Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. President gives all the related information. Guest speaker with a positive message. Some of the past have been stress management, the power of positive thinking, emotional intelligence, the power of your passion, and many more. One small positive thought your whole day. During the introduction to the Phoenix Seminar, Dave and John decided a Positive Thinkers Club would be a great way to have people meet on a regular basis, promoting a positive state of mind. And I totally agree with that. We're continuing to grow in membership numbers and focus effort on attracting younger adults. More workshops and seminars once regulations allow, and back to more in-person meetings, keeping online Zoom meetings happening. And we currently have 110 members as of January. And why should you join the club? To find like-minded people to share your passions with. We are all passionate about something. Your membership and all you need to know. Become a member because there's great networks, attend positive thinking seminars for free, and we're currently only online on Zoom. We're looking at future events to be possibly held at the Lantern with other options to be looked at in the future. And if you're looking to become a member, if you're not already, the single is 30, family is 40 for a maximum of 4 members, and the youth membership, 25 or younger, is $20. And upcoming events, don't miss out. As of today, we're having the lovely Charlene Brophy to give a lovely presentation here. And the rest of the month will be announced when information is to be provided. So here's a long list of who our board are. Co-founder Dave Rodowski, co-founder John Snow. I am the current president. We're looking for somebody for vice president of speakers. If anybody's looking to become a member of the board, Tina, the lovely Tina Olivero, is vice president of membership. Thank you, Tina. Secretary Jackie. I am also the director of social media. Alex Zooey, the director of nominations. Director of contacts is Tom Chalker. Director of the newsletter and past president is the fantastic Katie Hussey, and other board members, Christina Howe and Brenda Walsh. Oh my goodness. Can't forget the treasurer. Gotta have the treasurer, Nicole Miller, yes, for sure. Twitter, Instagram, and we also have our own website. So if you'd like to get in contact with us, we have many different ways of doing so. If you'd like the information, we can provide that later. Also, to get in touch for questions and suggestions, we have our own email address. I would like to now pass it along to the lovely Tina Olivero to give the affirmations for today. Thank you, Tina.
So take a nice breath in, everybody relax, and just tune into the words and let this absorb and sink right into your cells. There's so much that we can't control about the trajectory of COVID-19 pandemic. But what we can control is our reactions at every junction and every challenge. We do have a choice. We're in control of ourselves and how we perceive every single circumstance. And here at the Positive Thinkers Club, we're committed to every bit of juice out of it and making the best of it and seeing life through the filter of positivity. We can decide to not give way to fears or worst case scenarios so that we can learn valuable lessons like caring deeply for each other, mitigating risk in a way that was not possible without technology and people coming together to solve a global issue. That is profound. You might say that we now understand that the adversities, they're happening for us. Our growth, our learning, our understanding, our compassion, our caring about our world and our people, and especially about our health. We're seeing it everywhere. Priorities have changed, and we're now focused on health and a sustainable future for our planet far more than we ever have before. No matter what happens, we find joy and positivity in this day. We're strong people. We did not stop. It made us stronger. We focused on the positive aspects of our experience, and we came to realize that there is a grander plan and that this is all a part of life's rich pattern. We've chosen to be positive and to be grateful no matter what our circumstances. And this, in and of itself, changes the trajectory of events. So as we affirm positivity and speak positively and act positively, we change the world, one circumstance at a time, one person at a time. That's my affirmation for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tina, for that. That was fantastic. I'd like to introduce the fantastic Charlene Brophy. Charlene is president and CEO of FONEMED, an international telemedicine company offering a patient-centered platform. So I would like now to introduce Charlene to take the floor, and we're interested in hearing what she has to say. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, and folks, thank you for the opportunity to chat with you a little bit today. I know we're all feeling a little bit of Zoom fatigue, and I appreciate you taking time on a Saturday morning to listen to my ramblings for a little bit. So I'm a typical Newfoundlander. I don't like to get up and preach. I'm not good at being scripted, so I just thought I'd kind of share my story of who we are and what we do and how we came to do this. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm certainly a born and bred Newfoundlander, and as you listen carefully enough, you'll certainly hear the Irish loop accent come out. So I grew up on the Southern Shore in a town called Fermuse in the Irish loop of the province. And growing up back many years ago in an Irish Catholic family, there wasn't a whole lot of choices for girls on what you would want to choose as a career path. You could be a secretary, which was, what our administrative professionals were known as then, or you could be a teacher, or you could be a nurse. There really was no other option. So at the end of high school, I chose nursing. And I pursued a career in nursing. And after graduating, moved to Ontario for a little while. And like most Newfoundlanders, we always come back. And I practiced as a bedside nurse for many years, in several years in Ontario. And then I worked for 11 years at the burn unit here at the Health Science Center as well. And I will tell you that I absolutely loved every minute of it. And if I had to live life over, I wouldn't change a thing. And I loved being a nurse. And what, some of the lessons that I learned at that bedside really is what made a difference for me in moving into the business world as well. And I hear people say all the time, can you imagine you did this despite the fact that you're only a nurse? And I say, I think I did this because I was a nurse. And I witnessed firsthand some of the challenges our healthcare system was facing in dealing with an overburdened emergency care system. And thought, how could we do this and make a difference? So when I moved back to Newfoundland back in 1999, there was a brand new startup company just starting called FONEMED. The premise was to put nurses on the phone with patients in the U.S. and provide services to them after hours when their doctor's office closes. So the company came to be because some of the early investors had attended a session that Dr. Max House had provided in Washington, D.C., on how he was providing remote healthcare services to coastal Labrador because they simply did not have physicians there. And they were using physicians from Memorial and providing services to coastal Labrador. So they thought, well, why don't we come to Newfoundland? Because Dr. House is certainly considered the pioneer of telemedicine, not only in North America, but globally as well. So had some U.S. and Canadian investors at the time, so set up shop here in St. John's in the Fortis building. And we shared space with AT&T. Because we really did not have any money. We had very little investment at that point. And we had one client group who was a doctor's office in Southern Oregon, who, when they closed their doors in the evening, they would send any calls that came into us. They only had 300 patients. And for the first month, the phone never rang. And for the first 3 months, the phone never rang. And we were worried, obviously. We needed to have 7 nurses in order to provide the 24/7 service they required. And we needed to have one IT person to make the systems work. But we had really no revenue coming in whatsoever for the first 6 months. And after 6 months, we brought a couple of small clients, but still not enough to pay the bills by no means. So there was a lot of talk about, are we going to keep going? How do we do this? And so on. But right from day one, when I walked through the door, I thought this could really turn into something. And what else can we do? And what else can we become? But we simply didn't have any money. So I believed in it to the point that I went to the investors and said, I'm willing to help you do this. And I know you can't pay me, so in lieu of salary, I'm willing to take some ownership in the company because I believe in it. And unfortunately, I was at a point in my life where I could do that. So in lieu of taking a salary when we didn't have the revenue to pay me, I took ownership in the company. And that's kind of how everything changed because as we all know, when you got some skin in the game, it's a whole new ballgame and so on. So over the next number of years, I became very active in reaching out to current clients and asking for referrals to other client groups in their area. And for anybody that we signed on, we gave them a month free services, for example, to the client, to the referring client, and so on, and had some great success in that sense. But everything totally changed for us when the 9/11 attack happened in New York City. Because at that point, one of our clients that we had brought on was Beth Israel Medical System, which is now known as Mount Sinai Medical System in New York State. It's the largest tertiary care center in New York City. So when the second plane hit, they called, and I know everybody remembers, who was young enough to remember those times where they were when we found out what was going on there. And when the second plane hit, the phone rang, and the clinical director said, "We're sending all of our calls to you. We need to send all of our staff to the front line to help and send nobody to the emergency room unless it's life or limb." And then, boy, the place really lit up. So all of our nurses worked for 26, 28 hours continuously because we just couldn't keep up with the demand. And what was really interesting is because of the telecommunication towers infrastructure at that point, individuals in New York State couldn't reach one another, but could reach Canada. So not only were we getting all kinds of calls from patients, such as to say, my apartment's filled with smoke. What do I do? Do I leave? Do I go out? Can I get in the elevator? And we were saying, do not leave. Turn off your lights, turn off your air conditioning units, put wet towels around your windows and doors, and don't move, because this was unfolding, by the minute. So we really didn't know what to do. But in addition to those type of calls, we were also getting a lot of calls from wives of firefighters who said, "I can't reach my husband. He's there. Can you reach him?" And a lot of those type of situations as well from, people who had loved ones working in the towers and so on. So it was not only was it a very challenging time to keep up with demand, but it was a very emotional time. And our nurses really, really struggled with that. But that was certainly one of my proudest moments in how they dealt with that. But as a result of our response, we got some great recognition from New York State for this role of the small Newfoundland company who helped Beth Israel manage the crisis at the time of need. And all of a sudden, our name got out there and the phone started to ring. And we had major growth as a result of, the darkest hour, certainly one of the darkest hours that's ever happened to the U.S. And then we grew and had fairly significant growth then over the next number of years and brought on a lot of practices. Like we brought on doctors' offices, we brought on the large hospital groups, we brought on health plans, we became workers' comp providers. And then as time went on, evolved even further and became involved in the biometric monitoring piece. So to this day, we've still got patients right throughout the U.S. that are using our nurse services to manage their population. They've got patients on heart monitors or oxygen saturation devices or blood glucose monitors for diabetics. They check their reading. If it's outside preset parameters, then the reading comes through to one of our agents in St. Anthony or Corner Brook or anywhere throughout Newfoundland nowadays. And then that agent will take that reading and farm it out to a nurse located in whatever state the patient is located in and deal with the situation. And it may be that we may have to involve their physician if it's a patient with heart failure, for example, and they're starting to put on, weight and significant weight in just a short period of time. And that typically means that they're going back into heart failure. We reach out to the doctor, we adjust their medications, and we keep them at home and prevent rehospitalization. So, the program has really sold itself and so on. And then so we're at our early years, we only had U.S. clients. We had nothing in Canada whatsoever. So then in 2009, we get on the provincial helpline in Newfoundland. That was still fairly new to the province, and we won that. So since 2009, we've been the back end of the 811 service in Newfoundland and Labrador. So anytime anybody calls 811, it comes through to us. And prior to the pandemic, very few people in Newfoundland even still knew that 811 existed. And now all of a sudden it feels like if your washer is not working, then call 811. We seem to be the source of all knowledge. So, we had great growth after that. And that was what was most important to me, because as a Newfoundlander, not only did I want to grow, and increase our investment, no doubt about it, but also to give back to the province that has given me so much as well. So that became absolutely our staple client. And then in 2014, I had moved through the ranks quite a bit very quickly early on. And then in 2014, I took over as CEO. And that was certainly probably my most personally challenging time ever, because I was the only female on the board and the only Canadian on the board of this male-dominated investor group that had, most of which were still founders, early investors of the company as well. And I can tell you there were lots of challenging conversations over what direction to go, or what we should be doing as a business, where we should be investing our money and opportunities, not only throughout North America, but some had some connections throughout Latin America and so on. And there was a lot of differing opinions in where I wanted to go with the company as a growth and where they thought we should be going. So I learned very early on to pick my battles, for the projects that I really believed were going to have the greatest return on investment. I pushed for them, and some I just had to give on, because it's give and take, and I'm not one to hold on to resentment. So if we butt heads, that's okay. That's a good thing sometimes, but I don't hold on to it. And I keep thinking about the Winston Churchill quote to say that, you're never going to get where you're going if you stop to throw rocks at every dog that barks at you. So I always kept that mentality, and I just kept going, and so on. And at that point, we were providing service to around 10 million people at that point. And then realized that we were challenged in what we could do because of our limited technology offerings. So we invested heavily in our technology. We hired a group of 6 software engineers here in Newfoundland, and brought in, a couple of them we brought in from other countries. We moved one family in particular from Venezuela, moved here in Newfoundland. But every one of our software programs are from very geographically diverse backgrounds and outside the country. And we invested heavily in technology and developed our own proprietary platform, inclusive of clinical algorithms, to be able to monitor and provide clinical services to any individual anywhere in the world in multiple different languages, and provide triage assessments. And we continue to offer that service today. And we've had some great success in bringing that technology to market as well. So not only are we a service company now, providing service today to 25 million individuals throughout predominantly North America, but the Caribbean and Latin America as well. We're also a technology company. So we use the platform ourselves to run all of our clinical programs, and we've had some great success in selling it as well. So the province of Saskatchewan, for example, also use our technology to run their provincial healthline programs. Some other smaller groups throughout Canada, and several throughout the U.S. as well, that use our clinical platform and run their own clinical services in-house as well. So that was the moment where initially I said I lost my mind, because going from a clinical perspective to becoming a technology company and then rolling it out, and all of a sudden you click on a button and it doesn't work, and I'm like, why does that not work? And the programmers are saying it's a bug, and I'm like, you can't have bugs, when you come from a clinical background, there's no room for error. So that was a real learning curve for me to move to becoming a tech company, and to learn to relax. It's all okay. It's technology. There's going to be issues. We fix them and we learn them and we move on. So, but we've had some great success with that as well. But undoubtedly, the greatest challenge in running the business over the last number of years has been presented to us in the last year and a half. And that's when the pandemic hit. And you can only imagine doing what we do in 2 countries, what the volume was like in trying to deal with a pandemic that was just unfolding throughout the US and Canada at the same time. So our demand for service increased by 1,500% almost overnight. Like, it was absolutely amazing to just see it unfold here in Newfoundland as a result of the calls cluster, but the exact same volume throughout the US, 10 times greater. So, we had to, we all just came together and go, well, what the heck are we going to do? And what worried me on the Canadian side in particular is there were so many people exposed. There were so many calls waiting for callback. And I thought, what's in that callback queue? What do we not know? And who's at risk there? And they don't know they're at risk. And they're sitting at home waiting for us to phone them back so we can determine, what they're going to do, or what do they need to do? Do they need to isolate, and so on? So we brought everybody together, and it was totally a all hands on deck approach. And I always knew we had a phenomenal team, but I can tell you I was never prouder than how they responded to the demand. So in just 2 weeks, we brought on 100 employees just here in Newfoundland and Labrador alone, just to deal with the demand locally, and brought through the exact same thing on the US side. So you can only imagine that our human resources professionals didn't sleep for quite some time. And we had what was really important to me is I was honest with our clients. So I had said to our team, you need to reach out to our clients, you need to tell them this is what's on the go. If they're going to continue to send their calls to us, then there's going to be significant delays. Could be days and days, or we can offer a hybrid model. When we can manage their volume, we'll take the calls. When we can't, we'll send the calls back to them. And we reached out to every one of our client groups throughout the US, in addition to the same communication with the province, and said, this is what we're dealing with, how do you want us to handle it? And they all came back with different options and so on. But as a result of being honest and transparent with our clients on what was happening, we didn't lose one. And we've received so many emails since the pandemic unfolded to say thank you for your honesty. I wish all of our other partners had been as honest with us, and so on. And it worked very, very well. So in Newfoundland as well, there was such a concern about we can't reach your doctor's office. The doctors weren't in, prescriptions needed to be refilled, and so on. So we had already been talking with the province about offering nurse practitioner services for a true virtual care clinic. So we put all of our development team on developing an application to be able to roll out to the province, hired a group of 9 nurse practitioners to add on to our 811 helpline. And we brought on a group of nurse practitioners so that we could escalate calls from our nurses on 811 to nurse practitioners for diagnosis and treatment of prescription if need be, and so on. And that has been an absolute phenomenal success. So you can only imagine, for example, I've got an 87-year-old mother who gets frequent urinary tract infections, who couldn't get into her doctor. Imagine having to take her to the emergency room, expose her to God knows what, when she could be treated right from her own home. So that's exactly what we did. And these are the type of situations that our nurse practitioners today are managing. Patients with strep throat or recurrent sinus infections or urinary tract infections, or patients who need their refill on their medication and can't get in to see the doctor, and so on. So we've got nurse practitioners today who can manage all of those type of situations. And that's worked extremely well for us and for the province. And then in addition to onboarding so many employees, I reached out to everybody and anybody in the community who could help. So I reached out to the regional health authorities and I said, what's happening now with your clinic nurses if there are no walk-in clinics? Can we have them? Can they help us manage the volume? I reached out to the School of Nursing and said, do you have nursing students that can help us, do an initial assessment of these patients that are waiting callback? And we brought on all of those individuals we could from the regional health authorities that have been displaced. We brought on the nursing students who were available to help reach out to patients to do that initial triage to see if they were at risk, if they were symptomatic or at risk for exposure to the virus, and arrange testing and so on. And then work very closely with the College of Registered Nurses as well in the province to expedite retired nurses' licenses so they could come back and help out with demand and so on. So the partners in the community were absolutely phenomenal to work with. We reached out to a local contact center and they helped manage some of our US overflow calls that were coming in. And then my desperate need was computers. and we couldn't find it. I bought every single computer we could find at Best Buy and at Staples. There was simply nothing left anywhere. So reached out to the English school district, and my burning need was really for monitors and for mice and so on, and keyboards. And boy, did they ever come through. So, you know, within 6 hours, there was a knock on our office door, and there was a huge truck in our parking lot filled with computer monitors and keyboards and mice and so on, so that we could get them out to staff. Because prior to this, everybody worked in contact centers. We didn't have, in the US, everybody worked remotely, but in Newfoundland, all of our agents worked in Corner Brook, Stephenville, St. Anthony, or in St. John's. So in addition to hiring all these people, we had to send everybody home as well. So the demand for technology was so great. But again, the community really stepped up for us. And the Department of Health in particular had just been a phenomenal partner throughout all of this. The communication was second to none. And when I say we met hourly, we sometimes met twice an hour, because as the situation was unfolding and we were identifying areas in the province where there was a lot of symptomatic calls coming in from one particular area, it allowed the Department of Health to divert the resources to where it was needed and so on. So they were simply a phenomenal partner throughout all of this. And we learned to prioritize, what's the most burning issue. And the most burning issue for me at that point was who's in that queue waiting for a callback, and how are we going to address that very quickly so we can identify anybody who's at risk, either who are currently symptomatic or have been exposed and need to be tested and so on. So it was constantly evaluating where we are, monitoring what the demand was, and figuring out a way to adapt to meet the demand and so on. And I've always been one to trust my gut, and I really did throughout this as well. And we changed, the communication with our team was certainly second to none, because we learned to spin on a dime very, very quickly. And the one thing, and probably the hardest thing for me in one way, but then the easiest in another, is I had to say no to opportunities. Because I can tell you, our phone did not stop ringing, not only in Newfoundland for demand, but from clients outside the province and outside the country and outside the continent that said, I need your services. I need your technology right now. I need you to take over this tomorrow. And I had to say no, because I was committed to serving our current client population. And I can tell you, anybody that knows me know that I don't say no easily to business, but it was the right time to just say no. We can't do it, not right now. And several of them have come back since. And again, much the same conversation. I appreciate your transparency, that you weren't just trying to push to sell something on us when you knew you couldn't deliver. So we've had some great success. And again, I don't think you can ever go wrong with being honest. So then I guess to bring it all home, today we're providing service to about 25 million individuals. As I said, most of it is nurses on the phone providing advice to patients who are sick. We run some specialized program, believe it or not, the CDC, the United Way, was one of our clients previously, that have helped prepare us for how to deal with a crisis situation, whether it was a pandemic or a nuclear attack, or an attack on a terrorist attack on a nuclear plant, and how we would respond to that as well. We had several specialty clients like that use our services anyway. We've got some large state clients in the U.S. that use us. As I said, some health plans and workers' comp groups we've had some great success with as well. And it's a different conversation when you're talking with a U.S. client as compared to a Canadian client, because in the U.S. it's all about dollars and cents. So at the end of every month, I report to our clients on the redirection cost savings. So by that I mean, we ask patients when they call us, what would you have done if our nurse wasn't available tonight? And this is where they tell us they wouldn't went to the emergency room or call 911 or whatever the case may be. And that roughly around 78% of patients who plan to go to an emergency department, we redirect to a lower level of care. In many cases, sometimes it's stay at home, especially if it's a mother calling because she's panicked with her child with a fever and she's simply not treating it appropriately. And once we tell her how to do so, then everything is fine. Or, we have them follow up with their doctor's office tomorrow and give some advice on how to treat the symptoms at the same time, at the current time, and so on. So when we report to our clients the dollars they've saved when their patient's not going to the emergency room, well, the program sells itself. Because, of course, they all want to do that, because there's penalties in the U.S. for hospitals who have readmitted patients and for physician groups who are not available and the patients go to the emergency room and so on. There's penalties to all of these groups for not managing their population to keep them out of the emergency care system. On the Canadian side, it's always access to care. So how do we keep patients out of our emergency department? And in Newfoundland, it's particularly challenging because even though the numbers are much the same for the patients that call 811 that we're going to go to the emergency room, we divert as well. The problem is for many rural communities throughout Newfoundland, there is nowhere else to go except the nearest emergency department. So that's why we've had some great success in putting the nurse practitioners on the line who can help diagnose and treat those patients and prescribe if need be and keep them at home to keep them out of the overburdened emergency rooms. So I've always just stuck to the belief in that we can do this and we can bring lessons learned elsewhere home, and we've had some great success because of that. I'll also tell you that we've also had lots of failures. There's been lots of client groups or opportunities that I pursued that simply didn't work out. And I never got caught up in being upset or angry that it didn't work. I always said, well, what can I learn from this to carry it forward? And I simply have always gone from failure to failure with never losing any enthusiasm whatsoever. So I think that certainly has helped us. And our conversation now has all turned to what are we going to do differently than our competitors? And it's all about how do we use technology and innovation to be able to disrupt the way we're providing services today. So I talked earlier about the virtual care clinic with the nurse practitioners so that anybody in the province now can download that 811 app that we developed for the province and make an appointment with the nurse practitioner. But we're continuing to evolve that to offer a whole bunch of other solutions that is going to be available for that as well. And one opportunity that's really important to me that I think is important to all of us is to prepare for some of the challenges that we're going to deal with mental health issues as a result of this pandemic. And I truly believe that the impact of that's going to be to the mental health system is going to be as impactful as the virus itself. And so we've turned our attention to preparing for that. And what do we need? What resources do we need? How can we advance our technology to be able to use the technology to help some of the demand? And then how do we back end that with professionals that we need to be able to provide the services after? So it's all about, use technology to the best of its ability, but never forget that no matter how great the technology is, there's sometimes a human voice. There's no replacing that no matter what. So I guess just to kind of clue up, again, just to kind of bring home some of the lessons that's most important to me is to share some of my experience. And that's really near and dear to my heart that I do so. I do a lot of mentoring programs with individuals and groups who are looking to scale globally and move outside of the province and so on. So I've shared some of the lessons learned and connections with and so on. And that's really truly important to me that I do that. And I've never been one to sugarcoat anything. My character has always been that I give an honest answer, and sometimes people may not like it, but I've had lots of opportunities presented to me that I didn't pursue because it wasn't a good fit with the organization, or that the risk of liability or litigation could be too great if something went wrong, and so on. So I've always held true to that, and that's really important to me. And I want to be known as somebody who's honest and transparent, while at the same time willing to share some of the lessons that I've learned. And I guess to close, what's most important to me at the end of my days is that I want to have been significant in the sense that I made a difference. I don't think there's any greater ambassador for this province than I am, and I truly love it in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think there's so much we can do here as a province. And how do we take some of our small local companies and help them scale to bring some of their great product or services outside the province, outside the country, and outside the nation to bring it elsewhere? So I want to make sure that I'm making a difference in giving back to the province that has given so much to me. And, we've got probably close around 300 employees now today because of the demand. We're constantly in recruitment mode, as you can imagine. The bulk of those are in Newfoundland, and it's important. All of our leadership team is here. All of our chief technology, finance, services, human resources. We run the entire organization from here, and that's been a great help and value to me personally to have the team that I'm so proud of that keep the company, keep the wheels on the bus going around me, and I just want to continue to do that as well. So that's at the end of the day, that's what matters. How do we love it here? How do we make sure we stay here and can afford to stay here? And how can we make sure we all thrive here? So that's kind of who we are, what we did, and then how we got here. And I'll stop talking now and take any questions or comments or whatever the case may be.
Thank you for sharing so much. It's such a step forward. So if anyone would like to share any questions, any comments towards Charlene's story, go ahead, please.
Well, I would like to say that, Charlene, you've always been an inspiration to me, and I'm so, so proud of the work that you've done. I think what you've done in terms of bringing Newfoundland to the world is unprecedented, and I love your commitment for other people doing the same. In terms of your mentoring and mentoring other companies, like do you have mastermind forums, and how do people, get involved with you in that way?
Yeah. So many of them, I'm very involved with INLO, and I've just accepted a board position with the INLO organization, the Newfoundland Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs. So a lot of it comes through that as well as with the St. John's Board of Trade as well. I'm part of their mentorship program as well, so I receive a lot of referrals come to that as well. And then informally through the community. So, anybody that reaches out to me, I often say, I spoke with so-and-so, and they thought, maybe I should reach out and have a chat to you. I was thinking about, what do you think of? And we'll have a coffee or lunch or whatever the case may be. And I'm more than happy to do that as well. So it's some of it is formal through the Board of Trade or through the ENLO or some of the other organizations. But a lot of it is just word of mouth in the community. And I'm very pleased to lend an ear to anybody that I talk.
Well, write me down for a coffee date.
Absolutely.
I want to say thank you so much. I'm a proud Newfoundlander, but when I hear stories like this, my heart just expands. I'm just so excited to be a Newfoundlander and, hear somebody who is so passionate about making a difference and globally. I mean, I'm there. I'm ready to bring my business globally. And so I'm excited about what you do. And like Tina, I'm ready to have a coffee date or lunch date with you. I'd really appreciate it. I have one question. So in your calls, do you get a lot of mental health calls?
We do. And over the last year, that has increased pretty significantly.
Right.
But we manage a fair number of mental health calls. And some of our U.S. programs, like we've got about 100 universities in the U.S., for example, that use our services to manage their student health population. Wow. And some of them we provide physical and mental health triage, some are mental health only. And we've done some real innovative work with some groups throughout the U.S. Like, for example, one research company through the University of South California that we work with, they had offered an app to their individuals, to 1,000 individuals who they deemed to be high risk for suicide. So every day they would answer 3 questions, and based on their responses, if the algorithm, this is where we use the technology in the back end, determined they were at risk for self-harm, then we would push an alert through to us in our callback queue. And then our nurse, in whatever state that patient was in, will call and say, just got your information back. What's going on with you today? What changed? And then we would do a risk assessment to determine how at risk they were. So, there's a whole series of questions you would address to say, is it somebody that's just thinking about it, or do they have a plan and have a plan? Do they have access to whatever the tool will be that will, whether it's pills or whether it's a gun or whatever the case may be. So we handle a lot of those situations today.
It's there, but the whole system needs to change.
It does.
I just want to say thank you again. You're so inspiring. I look forward to meeting you in person.
You too, Leslie. Thank you.
Mental health and addictions for Eastern Health. If anybody's interested, they are looking for people with lived experience to give input where they can improve the system.
Yeah, I would love to be. We'll be in touch, Tina. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree, Tina, and that I would like to have some information about that as well. And Leslie, my heart goes out to you and that. Lots of love and healing energy and that for your daughter as well, okay?
The future that we're living into is uncertain, and it's being reflected back, and it is impacting our mental health. So it's about creating a future that's inspiring, that's sustainable, that's healthy. And we need to be leaders out in the forefront, painting the picture of what's possible. And if anybody knows that, you guys do, working on the front lines like this every day. So we should be architecting structures of futures that people can have hope from.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. And let's not wait until people crash. Let's not wait till this pandemic is over and people are at the end of their rope and can no longer have any tools to be able to cope. How do we manage that now? How do we get out there now and say, this is okay? And this is what you can do to help you through it. And this is, what so everybody needs to know that there's hope at the end of that road. And for many people, they don't see it. And I don't want to wait until we get there. I don't want to wait until the system crashes. I want us to be as well prepared for this as we possibly can.
Charlene, I don't know if you're reading the chat or not, but there's been a few messages put in there. Dave says, amazing story, Charlene. Congratulations on your success. It shows that we can do anything if we put our minds to it. Also, yeah. Katie saying, thank you. We do live in an amazing province.
Right,
and there's a question here. Do you plan on progressing to preventative care as well, especially knowing that most of doctor's visits are for stress-related and preventable diseases?
We are. And again, that's when I talked a little bit about bringing some of the lessons learned south of the border home, that's important to us. So we do some preventative programs today and are really growing that line as well. So again, it's so different in a privately funded healthcare system. So individuals in the U.S. get a break on their insurance rates if they go through various preventative measures every year, and that may include a mammogram for women or a pap test, and may include a prostate exam for men of a certain age, and so on. So they get reductions on their insurance costs to do so. But I want to bring some of that home here as well, because there are so many people in our province that think, how do I get this? Or, how do I arrange to get this? For what do I even need to have done? And so on. How do we bring that awareness of what, because we reached a point in our healthcare system where we as individuals need to be our own advocates, because we can't wait any longer for anybody else to speak up and recommend you need to have this. So we need to make sure that we're educating the people of this province that this is what you should have done every day. You need to ask your doctor for, or your healthcare practitioner for, or whatever the case may be, is because this is how you're going to stay healthy as well. You need to have your cholesterol checked. If you're a man of a certain age, you need to have your prostate checked and so on. So how do we bring that preventative awareness to the public is a big piece of what I want to do going forward, to bring some of those lessons from the U.S. home as well.
Yeah. Preventative health as opposed to reactive health.
Right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, because that's what's breaking the healthcare system. Because people don't know that they need to do this, and by the time they crash, then it not only is is it a cost to the healthcare system, but the outcomes are not as good as well. And when we look at our what we as a province spend per capita in healthcare systems and have the worst outcomes still, then you know what, we need to let's take ownership of this. Now let's not blame. I always say let's not blame anybody that came before us. Let's all take ownership and say, well, what can we do to make it a better place going forward?
Else, with any other questions before we close the meeting for today?
Beautiful story, so enlightening, and thank you so much for everything you do.
Glad to do so. It's been great to meet you all. Thanks for taking time to log in this morning.
We're very grateful that you all were here. So hopefully you all have a fantastic afternoon, and hopefully I will see you again soon. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Have a great Saturday.
Sending big hugs to all who are left.